It's good to be back at KM World. Sinequa is a perennial here, and I have about 15 minutes with you today. I was asked to talk, to bring things kind of down to earth when it comes to AI. So let me introduce Sinequa again, for those of you that may not know. The organization was founded back in 2006. It's French-born, and we provide a cognitive search or an insight engines platform, depending on which term you ascribe to. The platform augments human intelligence with built-in natural language processing and machine learning, two key components to what we'll call pragmatic AI. And basically what the platform does, it extracts relevant information and insights from almost any text-based source. And it does that while providing sort of this market-leading security and big data scalability. So we tend to work with large organizations that have a lot of data silos, a lot of content silos, and have typically a geographically dispersed presence operating in multiple languages. So it's complex. So let's get down to it. I thought that maybe the best way to talk about AI today is to kind of contrast pure AI versus what we'll call pragmatic AI. So let's go with pure AI. Pure AI is the idea that machines have kind of equal or superior intellectual abilities as the humans that created it, right? It's believed to be able to learn, predict, and adapt to situations on its own. And I would argue today pure AI is pure fiction, and Hollywood does a great job of kind of bringing it to life for us, right? You could go all the way back to Metropolis, a film from 1927. It was a German expressionist sci-fi drama by Fritz Lang, where the kind of the AI robot comes to life. Or you could fast forward to the future. There's the obligatory Terminator reference. One of my favorites was Her. It's a romantic drama from maybe less than a decade ago, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Kind of falls in love with his personal assistant. So there's plenty out there for us, and I think that kind of sets a nice bar for sort of this idea of pure AI, based on the definition here. Pragmatic AI exists today and can be defined as a collection of AI technologies that come together, are cohesively designed to work together to deliver specific business value. And as the name suggests, it kind of forms this, this circle where the humans are out training the AIs, the pragmatic AI technology, and then the pragmatic AI technology turns around and augments human intelligence, right? So that's a symbiotic example of humans and machines kind of working together. And here's just a list of some of the more common technologies, AI technologies that become sort of woven together. And this pragmatic AI technology is gaining traction. It's in production. And if you just look at the news like I did to prepare this talk over the last couple of weeks, there are a couple of interesting examples. This one's Twitter. Twitter came out in a Fortune article just a few weeks ago claiming that this quarter, they're up to 50% of the abusive tweets are being removed automatically by AI. And what I thought was interesting is if you go back to the previous quarter, it was only 43%, and the quarter before that, 38%. So it demonstrates a pretty rapid acceleration in the rate at which Twitter is getting a value from AI for a very specific purpose and a very important purpose. Another example, organization based here in the Beltway area, Fannie Mae. I have a friend that works there, kind of pointed me to this article, and they have an operations tool that they use in IT that has helped the first 8 teams to receive the tool see a 35% reduction in incidents. So real ROI here. How does it do it? It's using machine learning to analyze technical problems and track patterns and isolate the causes of crashes so they can accelerate the remedies and apply remedies kind of across similar situations. So pretty significant ROI, like I said, and again, a very specific application of AI here, and in both cases against unstructured kind of texty type content. In our world at Sinequa, we see some very specific use cases And again, I'm going to leverage Hollywood here because I think they provide such a nice contrast. You may recall The Matrix. I can't believe it's like 20 years old now, this movie. But you may remember the scene where Neo rescues Trinity, and she essentially downloads and learns how to fly this helicopter on demand, right? Tank, I need a pilot program for the B-212 helicopter, right? And boom, talk about knowledge management or knowledge acquisition, right? Now, sure, there's a human in the loop here, but the knowledge acquisition in that scene is 100% automated, and it's 100% today, at least, barring developments to Neuralink and all those things that the previous speaker talked about. It's total fiction. But what I would argue is that today, and we see this, actual humans can augment their performance on the job related to knowledge acquisition with pragmatic AI, right? You can use a collection of these technologies to bring together all the elements of a given subject into a holistic view of that subject to inform, the status of a repair case. Think of there was a talk just yesterday about an aerospace manufacturer, using this type of technology to bring together all the details of the support case to get that plane back up in the air faster by getting information about the issue, the potential resolutions, the parts necessary, the people, the experts that could actually put that fix in place. So, pure versus pragmatic knowledge acquisition. Another one that we see a lot at Sinequa is around expertise. So you remember this was kind of a cute movie, Big Hero 6. It's a playful movie in which this robotics prodigy, this kid, befriends Baymax. And Baymax is this cuddly, inflatable robot and self-described personal health companion, right? And while any of us would be ecstatic to have our own personal health companion like Baymax, it's pure fiction today. However, technology does exist to surface the experts across an organization without those experts having to curate their profile that, I think we've all probably seen that doesn't really work. It's hard to enforce that policy, but to use AI technology to go through the content and the way these folks are collaborating across the organization and then surface them as the experts based on their contributions, that's a pragmatic way to identify the experts, put teams together. You could think about this in the context of a pharma group doing, drug development. You could think about a law firm with offices around the world trying to put together a litigation team. Very useful for surfacing experts. And then the last Hollywood example, again, obligatory reference to Minority Report. This was a movie based on a story by the fiction writer Philip K. Dick. It's an action detective thriller, if you haven't seen it. It's based here in Washington, D.C., but in the year 2054, so in the future. And they use, in the story, the police utilize this psychic technology to arrest and convict murderers before they commit the crime. So it's pure fiction, right? But here we are in 2019, and I would argue pragmatic AI, and we see this at Sinequa, it's being used by organizations today to accelerate regulatory compliance and help organizations avoid costly fines and even more costly potential damage to their brand reputation. Think about GDPR compliance, for example, right? And we see customers not necessarily using this as their initial use case with AI technology, but kind of realizing that, hey, we have all this information indexed by this single system. Why can't we use it to at least start the compliance process? What do we have on this European data subject, for example? So three, I think, very good examples where, pragmatic AI is powering solutions today and someday may evolve to more pure AI type samples. Okay, so what's powering all these solutions that I'm talking about? What's really AI software platforms? And I like the IDC definition. It's kind of twofold. On the one hand, these AI software platforms, they have capabilities, right? They're like the kitchen. You go in to make a dish, and you expect the kitchen to have everything you need to put that dish together. So AI software platforms provide functionality to analyze, organize, access, and even provide advisory services, again, based on this range of structured and unstructured information. So the structured information typically tells you kind of what's happening, and the unstructured will typically tell you why it's happening. It brings that context. And then what's on the menu, right? What's coming out of those AI software platform, again, are these technology components that can be woven together in cohesive ways to solve business problems. And here's a list ranging from text analytics to machine learning, deep learning, to types of visualization, question answering, what have you. This is the Sinequa platform, and I bring it up because I think it's useful to think about these AI software platforms in these different component areas. So if you think about it, the content ingestion, if you're really going to have an end-to-end solution, you need some way to get to all the content kind of across the enterprise. And these are your connectors and your converters to handle all the different data formats. As that information is coming in and being ingested, you need some way to start to interpret meaning, or at least start to seed the content and data with meaning. So these are things like expanding acronyms, very mundane, or making connections along topical lines. You may have an individual customer's information kind of split. From CRM, it may have pervaded your systems and be in other systems. Well, kind of putting that back together takes some intelligence. So being able to apply technology like natural language processing or statistical analysis to kind of bring that information back together, at least in a virtual way. So now you've got this enterprise corpus idea, and that's where you want to be, for certain use cases at least, applying your learning, right? Bringing models and algorithms that have been trained to go against that enterprise corpus and start to surface, maybe it's personally identifiable information in the case of the regulatory compliance use case, or maybe it's the customer information, like I mentioned, for better customer service, right? None of that would be useful at all if you didn't have an intuitive way to present what was coming out to the user, which could either be some sort of user interface framework, or maybe APIs to access that information programmatically. And one thing that we've learned at Sinequa, we're humbled by it, is that innovation occurs elsewhere. If you have a platform, it needs to be open to other types of innovation from the big guys, the big internet giants. It needs to be accessible to specialty players that are doing ontologies for specific domains. It needs to be open to data science platforms so you can kind of accommodate the exploration and experimentation that these data science folks are doing. So it has to be open in that sense to incorporate the innovations that are happening outside. And the bottom line is that all of this helps to reduce, or at least automate where possible, human interpretation and alleviate the cognitive burden of the information worker, right? And that's all of us, right? Automating things so we can stay in the flow of our work and get things done. One other insight that I'll share before closing. This is kind of a typical life cycle of our customers. It depicts kind of a phased approach that most of our customers take on their so-called information journey. You may have seen, we announced yesterday here at KM that our partnership with SAIC led us to engage with NASA. We're going to be working with them at their Marshall Space Flight Center. It's already begun, and they're starting their information journey, right? So that was a big announcement for us, and a big opportunity for all of us, Sinequa, SAIC, and NASA, to get together. But note that each phase kind of builds upon the previous phase. We're layering in these AI technologies and layering in additional use cases. And as the customer, what we've seen, as they gain prowess with these technologies and these capabilities, and they evolve their understanding of what's possible, it accelerates the information journey. And from an operations point of view, organizations that have already adopted kind of that agile mindset or on the path to agile, this is a very good fit, right? Because everything kind of builds off of each other. It's not that a waterfall approach. It's very agile in terms of that iterative and incremental improvement. So let me just close. I brought you back to the present from the previous future conversation, but I'm gonna throw you back into the future here with a few considerations to close by. Today, what we see in our business is that a lot of workflows, information-based workflows, are still human-driven. where we're going is, automating that and letting the machines do the data. The data today is structured with some unstructured. Tomorrow, it's all available data, right? That unstructured data that gives you that context to understand the evidence behind your facts. Today, artificial intelligence is somewhat of an add-on. It needs to be core. It needs to be built in and engineered from the beginning. Today, the organizational silos are somewhat hidden. We're going to bring them out, make them visible, and make it not really matter that they're silos. And today, to some extent, legacy systems are viewed as a liability. We keep it around maybe because we have to for legal reasons, but the ability to kind of leverage that information for trends and to see kind of what's happened in the past, maybe even expose insights that have been documented but haven't quite yet surfaced because their time hadn't come. I saw yesterday one of the guys had an Apple Newton on the screen, not physically, and that was something that was invented in the 80s, and it was just an idea whose time hadn't come yet, right? And it came back arguably in the form of the iPhone. And then lastly, the point solution approach, it's not really sustainable in an information-driven world. So, we talk about the platform approach, leveraging the same enterprise corpus across the enterprise with different user interfaces that are aligned for different user goals. So hopefully that helps orient you. Thank you. Stop by. We're at booth 100. This is our contact information. Appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.